Okay, so this is 20 questions with Tyrone Hayes. Tyrone, Pontiac Township High School is humbled to be able to Skype with you. These are some of these kids are some of the most amazing kids, and they came up with this program to be able to talk to people who are the game changers, ninja eco warriors like yourself, who are making a difference. And you've inspired these kids to go down a road that is not extremely traveled. In other words, going down and doing testing of the number one used herbicide in America. And just remember, these kids are in Corntown, USA, and so we live in a population of 10,000 people. Our number one source of income for our community is agriculture, and so these guys have the opportunity to not only. There went the camera again.
Yeah, I see. I don't know why.
They have the ability to really make good things happen, and a lot of people are excited about what they're doing. And I think you're obviously one of the reasons why they're doing what they're doing. And so, without further ado, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to introduce one of them, and then they'll introduce each other, and they just have some questions that they've been dying to ask you. And again, Tyrone, I know we've been trying to do this for a while, and I appreciate your patience, and not to mention I appreciate your passion and the things that you believe, and more importantly, what you won't stand for. And what you do stand for. And so with that, I can say that it is truly an honor. I appreciate everything, and I'll turn it over to one of the kids at this time. Molly, you want to go? Or I don't care who wants to go first. All right, Jacob is going to go first, and he'll introduce himself, and he'll ask you his first question.
All right, thank you. And it's my pleasure to be here. I'm glad we can finally get this to happen.
How's it going?
How's it going?
I'm Jacob Giles, and I'm a senior here. So, just going to start off real quick. So, in preparation for this, well, not necessarily in preparation, but I watch a lot of documentaries, and one specifically dealt with this. Well, multiple did. But this one was called King Corn. And one of the big things that I saw from it, and then I did some later research, was the compounds in which make up our bodies. So from analysis, people are primarily made up of corn-derived compounds, with over 75 of all commodity cornfields being planted with GMO corn and being treated with pesticides. What does that mean for humans and other organisms, since that would be because what we put on the food? And I'm sure you know where I'm going with this. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if per se corn is the problem. I think the problem is the amount of pesticides that are used with corn. And I think the problem with GMOs, I don't know if there's a particular public health concern with GMOs, at least in terms of the data and information that I have. I think the problem is that most of the GMOs are being produced in order to allow a greater use of pesticides. And that's my issue with GMO. When I first entered college and people first started talking about genetically modified organisms, the promise was for drought-resistant wheat or frost-resistant strawberries. And what's happened now is the chemical industry has actually captured the food industry. So, for example, 90% of all the seeds that we use to grow our food are owned by 6 chemical companies. So the incentive is now to create GMO crops that depend on those pesticides. The idea is not to grow more food. The idea is really to use more pesticides, because that's what they're really making their money on.
Yeah, and oftentimes they usually center the crops around the pesticide that they're specifically using for them. So say if one type of strain of corn can only be treated by one type of pesticide. So yeah.
Well, I think the other problem is that the industry is now looking for different ways to use corn. I mean, you may know this, but we eat directly less than 2% of the corn that we grow. Most of the corn is being used to make other products or for animal food, and the largest majority goes to producing ethanol, supposedly for cleaner renewable fuels.
Let me see, yet another question. So here's about specifically the agriculture in the United States. So when you look at it, what do you see as like the biggest flaw or like a point that we need to work on?
Again, I think the biggest flaw with agriculture is that it's been captured by the chemical industry. So the chemical industry's interest is in making profit off of chemicals. So they're altering our crops so that they can sell more chemical, as opposed to really looking at the crops and really looking at the food needs of the world. For example, 20% of the world dies of starvation, whereas most of what's grown in the Midwest is corn, which again, we eat less than 2% of.
Are you aware of the situation with bees and other insects or organisms like that?
I'm not an expert in that area, but I am aware of the loss in honeybees, and I am aware of the suggestion in the data that suggests that nicotinoid pesticides are involved in part of that decline.
Yeah, I was looking at the areas of China that have completely wiped out the bee population, and now they're being forced to hand pollinate all of their fields.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to look through all of my questions. I was going to ask about GMOs, but you covered that pretty well.
Why don't you go ahead and introduce Molly or somebody else, and then tell them thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to somebody else. I think Molly's ready to go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good talking to you.
Yeah, you too.
Hi, how are you doing today?
I'm good.
My first question was, what inspired you to start your work with atrazine?
I actually started working with atrazine because the manufacturer approached me first as a consultant to review the literature to try to determine if there was evidence that atrazine was an endocrine disruptor. And in the absence of such evidence, I was later contracted by the manufacturer to start doing experiments with amphibians to try to understand the impact or the effects of atrazine on amphibians. So it was really the company. I'd never heard of atrazine prior to being asked to do that.
That's cool. And where do you conduct like most of your research that you did on atrazine?
The laboratory research was conducted here at the University of California, Berkeley. We then subsequently conducted field work that included work through Nebraska, Nevada, Colorado, Wyoming, Illinois, and we've subsequently done more field work that we're about to publish looking at the incidence of disease rates and reproductive abnormalities in frogs all across the United States, throughout Montana, down the Mississippi River, the Missouri River, the North Platte River, and we've done some limited collection work for some of the work in South Africa.
That's cool. And why did you primarily choose frogs to work with?
My laboratory is focused on amphibians since I've been a professor, and I worked with amphibians as a graduate student and as an undergraduate. And the interesting thing about amphibians is, of course, they're in an aquatic environment, and the African clawed frog is completely aquatic throughout its life cycle. So they're very vulnerable and very likely to be exposed to contaminants of water like atrazine. They also have permeable skin, so they're very likely to take up these compounds. And they also display developmental and physiological events that depend on steroid and thyroid hormones, which are affected by atrazine and other endocrine disrupting chemicals. So there's also an interest because amphibians are declining globally. Up to 70% of all amphibians are in decline. So there's an interest also in trying to understand the role of chemical contaminants and other environmental perturbations in that decline.
And then my last question was, at the university, do you teach at all, or do you just conduct research?
Teach as well. In fact, we just had our last lecture yesterday for the semester.
What classes do you teach there?
I primarily teach a human endocrinology course. I also teach an advanced course in endocrinology for graduate students. And up until last year, I taught a freshman course introducing them to topics that are important for everybody. So things like endocrine disruption, climate change, nanotechnology, etc.
Tell them we want to enroll in this class.
Yeah, we want to enroll in your class out there. Well, thank you so much for talking with me. I'm going to introduce Zach.
Thank you. Thank you for your question.
How's it going, sir?
Oh, good. You?
Yeah, I'm good. Let's see.
Oh, we lost you again. Tell him we lost him.
Yeah, we lost you again.
Oh, okay.
What is this?
All right, it must be a timer for my camera.
Alright. I know you used frogs in the whole project, but did you take any other, like, organism into consideration for it?
Not really. Again, I think amphibians are ideal for the kind of work that we were doing, and we already had the models set up in the laboratory and the types of experiments designed that we needed to do to get the work done, which is why the company approached us. But other people have studied effects of atrazine on everything from rats to birds to quail. There's a number of studies on zebrafish and salmon. There's studies on caiman, which is a reptile. So studies have been done across vertebrate classes, not just on amphibians, and those studies have collectively shown problems with atrazine associated with endocrine disruption and reproductive abnormalities in development.
Alright, in 2008, an article was published in Environmental Science and Technology, which described the research of Japanese scientists who conducted the same studies as you.
Mm-hmm.
However, their findings was just countered everything that you have found. How frustrating was that, and how did you react?
That's the Iguchi paper you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, no, their findings didn't counter the things that we've done. Actually, I know Tyson Iguchi very well. I think the work was characterized that way. If you look in Journal of Stirrup Biochemistry and Biophysics, I published a paper with Tyson Iguchi actually showing that there was a skew in the sex ratio associated with the atrazine. So I've since co-authored with those. I think the study was characterized that way by the industry, but I don't think there have been any non-industry funded studies that it's actually refuted any of our work.
Okay, let's see. Right here, it's kind of bundled up. I first actually listened to you and discovered you on a TED Talk. How was your experience on that?
And that's the only TED Talk I've done. It was an amazing experience. I don't know if you've seen the whole show, but the whole event. But Hillary Clinton, among others, spoke directly after me. So I got to meet Hillary Clinton and some other really amazing. The woman who started the Vagina Monologues also spoke there. So it was a really amazing event. Very much one of the fanciest events that I've ever spoken at, and certainly well attended. And also the co-speaker that I spoke with also was pretty amazing to meet her and being part of her film as well. It was a little frustrating after because it took them a long time to post the TED Talk, mostly because Syngento's lawyers fought with them for over a year to try to keep that from being posted. And I was since invited back to do an international TED Talk, and that was canceled, I presume, because Syngenta had a hand in scaring them off from having me speak again. But overall, it was an amazing experience.
It was kind of an honor to talk to you, and I'm going to hand it off to Connor.
Hey, Tyrone, I also thought about something, too, after you and I were talking, and I'll give it
I'm
here.
sorry, you're breaking up a little bit. I hear you.
I thought about something, too. You know, you asked me about our tests we're using. If you have a suggestion of something else that we should be doing or looking at or doing alongside what we're doing, we'd love to hear it. And if it's something that we can do, we'd love to implement that and do it alongside with what we're going to do here in the spring. So just something to think about. Anyhow.
No, I think that's the most best and the most practical way to carry out your work. I think what may be missing is if you're measuring 3 parts per billion and above, we actually know that atrazine is biologically active at levels that are below 3 parts per billion. So some of the areas that are coming up negative, wildlife might still be at risk, and just because it's not detectable at that level.
Sure, I get that. So here's Connor.
Hi, Mr. Hayes. My name is Connor Wolf. I'm a junior here. I wanted to ask you, so obviously atrazine has affected our environment a great deal. Do you think it's possible to reverse the effects that atrazine has already caused?
It depends on the effects you're talking about. So the effects of atrazine that occur early in development are permanent. So when you make a hermaphroditic frog or you make a male frog turn into a female, if you remove the atrazine, that's not reversible. That's a permanent effect. Effects that occur when animals are exposed as adults, some of those we find to be reversible. So when the testosterone levels go down in exposed males as adults, when you remove the atrazine, the testosterone levels return to normal. Other effects that have been described, like sex reversal in other types of animals, and like its implication in breast cancer and prostate cancer, cancer's treatable and removable, but it's not reversible. So once you've been exposed, your risk of cancer, and actually once you have cancer, that's not really a reversible process, or not one that I would call reversible anymore.
Okay, I just wanted to say we lost your camera again.
Oh,
Sorry.
I'm not sure why I keep doing that.
Okay.
At least now I figured out how to turn it back on.
So, I think you briefly touched on this, but what was the reason you used amphibians?
That's just what my laboratory's done and what I've done for the last 30 plus years. And they are a useful and very sensitive model for doing the types of studies that we've done. The only other model that would really approach ours is probably fish, but amphibians have much more dramatic and observable developmental events that are hormonal dependent. And so I would argue are maybe even better models for fish than fish.
Okay. One last question from me. So a lot of foreign countries other than the U.S. have completely banned atrazine.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think eventually the U.S. might ban atrazine as well?
I think it'll be very difficult in the U.S. because I think that the amount of money that the manufacturer puts into lobbying and the amount of money and muscle that they put into manipulating the agencies that would regulate the chemical will make it very difficult for it to actually be banned in the U.S. There's discussion in individual states. As you might know, Minnesota tried to ban atrazine. New York has made some attempts. Illinois has looked at and made some attempts to think about banning atrazine, but the manufacturers put an awful lot of money in trying to fight that, as they did in Europe, but just the system is different in Europe. And in the U.S., the manufacturer is challenged to show that their chemical's bad, so innocent until proven guilty. Whereas in Europe, the precautionary principle says that if there's the exposure potential and the potential for harm, then the company has to prove that its chemical's safe. And it's not possible to prove that atrazine is safe, given all the data that are available out there.
Okay. Well, thank you. I think I'm going to go ahead and introduce our last speaker, Megan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi Tyrone, my name's Megan.
Good to meet you.
Okay, my first question is, were you inspired any way when you were a kid?
Was I inspired? I have been interested in the same thing and in frogs and in biology and in life and in wildlife ever since I can remember. I guess my inspiration may have been just being able to be out and see animals and wonder about things like why birds fly south and how they know when to fly south and why tadpoles metamorphose when they do. External inspirations might have been, I used to watch a show called Wild Kingdom. I used to read National Geographic magazine. Those things were all inspiring, and also inspired by, outside of where I went in my profession, just inspired by my parents and my grandmother and for how hard they worked for what little they had was an inspiration. And I also had some teachers that were very encouraging, including a science teacher, Miss Caloy, in high school.
What got you interested in this kind of project with atrazine and doing it with the frogs?
I've always been interested in frogs. The interest in atrazine and using frogs that way was brought to me by the manufacturer. They were looking for somebody to study and evaluate atrazine, and sort of under some pressure from government agencies to do the kind of work. And so that was introduced to me by the manufacturer. I had never heard of atrazine prior to meeting the company.
And my last question is, do you think there is any other way that we can cure not taking in the toxins?
That you can, sorry?
Not take, inhaling these toxins?
Well, for some chemicals, like if there's water contamination, it's possible to filter out most of the water contaminants with filters. The problem with that is that doesn't solve the environmental problem, so wildlife and animals are still at risk. And also the problem with that is low-income or uninformed people also don't have maybe access to or the finances to get those filters. And in addition, the people who are at the biggest risk, farm workers and factory workers, that exposure, for example, to atrazine is dermal, is across the skin, or by breathing it in, by inhalation. And so the people who are most at risk, filtering out the water wouldn't really reduce their risk of exposure and risk of adverse effects.
By the way, we lost your camera again.
Oh.
Well, it was nice talking to you. I'm going to direct it back to Ritter. Thank you.
Well, we've gotten an amazing opportunity to speak with you. Here's the thing. I think that we have an awesome opportunity in front of us, and what we're trying to do is inspire kids and a generation to action, and at least to be conscious of what's out there, what's going on, and to have informed decisions that they can make from data that they've collected. One thing I can say about these kids is they're not afraid to lead the charge and carry the torch of change by proving themselves and working hard to do that. And so I'm humbled to be their teacher. I'm just, I guess, what you would call their chief cheerleader of their team, So, Tyrone, I know that this has not been an easy battle for you. I know that you have gone through so many things. And if you had some insight to these guys, currently they're working on plastic bag legislation here in Illinois. Their predecessor class was involved with writing a piece of legislation to generate funds to pay for pharmaceutical disposal throughout the state. And so these guys are really working hard on so many fronts of different environmental issues. This is one that is very important. If you were to give them some advice and what you've gone through, using that as the basis, what could you tell them? And I know it's not easy, but what could you tell them?
Wow, that's a hard question. One, let me say they're lucky to have you, and two, I'm incredibly impressed at the involvement and the level of involvement and the level of knowledge and the amount of work that's gone into what you guys are doing, both in collecting the data as well as getting informed about what the issues are and choosing those issues. And I think, the biggest weapon against industry and the others who are generating the problem is that when you have knowledgeable people. And so just to have that, whereas most of people don't even know what's going on and what the problems are, and certainly to have that at a young age and allow that to then steer you in your direction of what you're going to major in and what you're going to do in college, and to get more information and more knowledge, I think is one of the most powerful things. There's always going to be pushback, whether we're talking about climate change or plastic bags or GPA or atrazine, or there are always going to be uninformed people that need to be informed. And so generating, that's why I give as many lectures and talks and things as I can, just generating a force of people who have the knowledge. And when we get enough people who have the information that outnumber the misinformation that's out there, then I think we can move forward. But there's always going to be antagonism. There are always people who think more about the dollar than about the environment or about our own future.
Right, and that's why I think the way to and again, I'm biased because I'm a teacher, but I think the way that we can see amazing change is through the eyes of our children and allowing them to be the champions for change. And that's why I think our projects that we've been working on, having kids be the leaders in those things, I think it really does get a lot of information out to people quickly, because when they go home and your parents or their parents and their grandparents have had a long day, or the people who take care of them, they at least listen to what they have to say if they're energized about it. And I think very quickly the voice of America is our students, and can do some amazing things. So that's the one thing that I look at as the giant ray of sunshine and hope in this whole process, is that if we can energize kids and get them excited, I think we have an opportunity to really make some lasting change. We've had a very fortunate time our ability to be able to speak to not only you, but Aaron Brockovich and Jan Schlickman and Dr. Brady Barr and people like that. And I think about the commonalities. And then you look at people like Olympic snowboarder Jamie Anderson, who she is extremely passionate as well, and making a difference in her own right. And I think about how we can energize people to hear the message that is out there. You're right. These kids are battling, obviously, a lot of different levels, and only if people are listening will they accomplish their goal. And sometimes people are out there to muffle what you are saying, as you well know, because I don't know how many times I've read about the times that you've been kicked in the teeth, but it's been on more than one occasion they've tried to do that to you. And so we applaud you. We applaud you so much for not allowing yourself to get knocked down, as long as you always get back up. And so I cannot be more proud to talk to you. My kids are sitting here, and they're all sitting there. They're all sitting there saying this is the coolest thing. We'd like to have the opportunity to share our data with you when we get it this spring. If you don't mind, I'll send that to you. And again, we can't be more thankful for today. If we find some other questions, there's a couple kids that weren't here because of commitments.
Yeah.
Would it be possible we send them to you in an email?
Absolutely, yes, please do.
And so, with that being said, I also wanted to say thanks for the inspiration.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm glad I could be a part.
So, with that, we will close. This was 20 questions with Tyrone Hayes. I've got goosebumps standing right here. I've got goosebumps on top of the goosebumps on my arm. If you can, I'll get that up there. So, but 20 questions with Tyrone Hayes with my environmental earth class. Tyrone, has been a privilege and an honor.
Thank you. It's been my honor.
Hey, wait, can we get a picture? We got to get a selfie with you.
Okay.
I just remembered we always take selfies. Hey, and if we send you a T-shirt, I survived 20 questions with, would you take a picture with it so we can have it for our classroom?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, I just remembered. I won't ask. I'll get everything. I'll get everything from you as far as the particulars. But the kids are making a T-shirt. I thought, oh my God, I forgot to ask. I almost did the biggest. Everything could have went, but if I forgot to ask about the T-shirt and taking a selfie, it would have been totally spoiled. All right, hold on. I'm gonna make you giant here. Oh, you look good. Now, we're gonna tell you when to thumbs up or smile. I'll tell you when to smile, but we're gonna get in with you and take a picture. All right, Megan, get in. All right, right there. Let's see if we can make it smaller. Hold on, just a second. They're scooting in right now as we speak. All right. They're getting into the camera right now. So hold on.
Okay.
All right, here we go.
Wait a second.
Come on,
Just a second.
Connor.
Oh, Connor's playing. Hold on.
Oh, wait. Oh,
That's good. Leave it up top.
okay, okay. There.
All right, here we go. Everybody get closer, 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 closer. Tyrone, give us a big old smile on 3. 1, 2, 3. And one more for the to make sure I didn't do it right. Hold on, one more. Everybody give a thumbs up. Everybody thumbs up. Tyrone, thumbs up.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Awesome. Yeah, we did it. All right. So I'll send you a copy. Tyrone, thanks for everything. You're the best. And I'll send you I'll have the kids package up a shirt. I don't know if it'll be before Christmas, but I'll send it to you. Yeah, he thinks I'm crazy. He knows I'm crazy. So I'll send you a Christmas. If it gets there, I'll send it to an address you give me a little bit later. We'll get that later.
Sounds good.
You're the best, Tyrone. Thanks so much. So awesome. We'll see you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. What an awesome dude.